This is an article from the History Channel about Thanksgiving, and I'm going to read it. In 1621, the Plymouth colonists and Wampanoag Indians shared an autumn harvest feast that is today acknowledged as one of the first Thanksgiving celebrations in the colonies. For more than 2 centuries, days of Thanksgiving were celebrated by individual colonies and states. It wasn't until 1863, in the midst of the Civil War, that President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national Thanksgiving Day to be held each November. Thanksgiving at Plymouth. In September 1620, a small ship called the Mayflower left Plymouth, England, carrying 102 passengers, an assortment of religious separatists seeking a new home where they could freely practice their faith, and other individuals lured by the promise of prosperity and land ownership in the New World. After a treacherous and uncomfortable crossing that lasted 66 days, they dropped anchor near the tip of Cape Cod, far north of their intended destination at the mouth of the Hudson River. 1 month later, the Mayflower crossed Massachusetts Bay, where the Pilgrims, as they are now commonly known, began the work of establishing a village at Plymouth. Throughout that first brutal winter, most of the colonists remained on board the ship, where they suffered from exposure, scurvy, and outbreaks of contagious disease. Only half of the Mayflower's original passengers and crew lived to see their first New England spring. In March, the remaining settlers moved ashore, where they received an astonishing visit from an Abenaki Indian who greeted them in English. Several days later, he returned with another Native American, Squanto, a member of the Pawtucket tribe, who had been kidnapped by an English sea captain and sold into slavery before escaping to London and returning to his homeland on an exploratory expedition. Squanto taught the Pilgrims, weakened by malnutrition and illness, how to cultivate corn, extract sap from maple trees, catch fish in the rivers, and avoid poisonous plants. He also helped the settlers forge an alliance with the Wampanoag, a local tribe, which would endure for more than 50 years, and tragically remains one of the sole examples of harmony between European colonists and Native Americans. In September 1621, after the Pilgrims' first corn harvest proved successful, Governor William Bradford organized a celebratory feast and invited a group of the fledgling colony's Native American allies, including the Wampanoag chief Massasoit. Now remembered as America's first Thanksgiving, although the Pilgrims themselves may not have used the term at the time, the festival lasted for 3 days. By the way, I think that should be Americas instead of Americans. I think there's an error there. Let's continue on. While no record exists of the historic banquet's exact menu, the Pilgrim chronicler, Edward Winslow, wrote in his journal that Governor Bradford sent 4 men on a fowling mission in preparation for the event, and that the Wampanoag guests arrived bearing 5 deer. Just to mention here, fowl is a word that means birds. These are birds that we eat. That includes chicken, ducks, pheasants, turkeys, all of those various birds, big birds that people eat. Historians have suggested that many of the dishes were likely prepared using traditional Native American spices and cooking methods. Because the Pilgrims had no oven, and the Mayflower's sugar supply had dwindled by the fall of 1621, the meal did not feature pies, cakes, or other desserts, which have become a hallmark of contemporary celebrations. Another word here about vocabulary, dwindle means for something to go down. So if the supplies had dwindled, it meant that they were either almost gone or gone. A hallmark is a perfect example of something. So if this is a hallmark of Thanksgiving, it's a perfect example of something that we do in Thanksgiving. Okay, this concludes the reading for the first part of the History Channel article about Thanksgiving.